Hello and welcome, my friends. Thank you for joining us on this first ever episode of the Machine Shop Mastery podcast. It is my huge honor to interview Scott Shortess, the CEO of Advanced Plastics and Advanced Machine and Fab. They are a family-run job shop in Oklahoma, started by Scott's father in the 70s and taken over by him many years ago. So it's a very interesting and wide-ranging conversation, from the difference in management philosophies of Scott's father and himself to the topic of family succession. We get into the importance of process over really many other things. And also Scott shares about a humbling trip that he took to Germany with his team, and where they realized just how much more they had to learn about running their business and process-based thinking. So without further ado, let's dig into the interview. Thank you so much for joining us and for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Scott, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you asking.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for those that are just tuning in, this is a new podcast. We are going to be exploring sort of what makes great machine shops great, looking at their history, looking at big decisions they've made over the years. And so, Scott is lucky to be the first guest. So, Scott, let's start by talking a little bit about your shop and yourself. Tell us the history of your shop, starting out with it.
Well, the name of it's Advanced Plastics Incorporated and Advanced Machining and Fabricating Incorporated. We actually run two companies through the same facility, working on marrying those up here in the near future. So we'll be under one structure. But originally, the business started as an industrial plastic distributor, rod, sheet, and tube, back in 1979, and shortly, within about a year of starting the business, my dad's best customer went to him and said, "I want to stop buying raw material and buy finished parts from you." And of course, that scared my dad. And but he first two pieces of equipment that he bought was a Morisiki SL1 and SL2, and put it in a garage. And
Nice
they were so
machines.
close together, you could hit cycle start with your thumbs. So that's kind of how we started. And right now we're about pre-COVID. We were 75 employees running three shifts through the weekend, and right now we're trending towards that number. But we've got about 30 pieces of equipment, automated fasten system, some really good automation tools, and primarily service the commercial aerospace, private aerospace, defense, and being in Oklahoma, we still service a lot of energy industries.
Okay. Very cool. And let's talk about the transition a little bit. So when did your dad started it? When did you get involved? How long were you involved before you took it over? And what was that process like?
Well, again, started in 1979. Again, out of a garage. Um, a lot of struggles. My dad wanted to be a football coach and a teacher, and took a job out of the paper to sell industrial plastics. And I think sometimes he wakes up and wondering what he created in this manufacturing world. But I joined him in the winter of '94, and was primarily inside sales. I had grown up in the shop running machines, maintenance, shipping and receiving during college breaks and summers. So, I had a good understanding of the business, and then with my formal education in business administration, helped with strategy and, all things, a small company. A lot of times my dad's very entrepreneurial, so a lot of decisions were made, by bringing the gun up and shooting it, and
Hmm.
sometimes, shooting from the hip is dangerous sometimes. So there's a lot of struggles between my dad and I on decision making processes,
Hmm.
and what's best. But you got to give it to a lot of these guys that start their business from nothing. They've they've made good decisions, and
Yeah.
I think most successful ones have always put their customer number one, and
Hmm.
no matter what it takes, get the customer satisfied. And
Yeah.
that's what built this business, and that's what continues to propel us. Is we hyper communicate with our customers. Bad news doesn't age over time, so
It's not like a good red wine.
no,
No,
it's not.
that's the phrase I use
Yeah,
too.
a Mad Dog 4040, I think, is what the wine would be called. But
Yeah.
we do a good job of that, and that we still have customers that I delivered to when I was 16, 17 years old. So that's a
Hmm.
testament to our reputation, and our quality. And I think in this business, especially in the aerospace, your permission to play is on time delivery and quality. I mean, if you don't have those two, you don't even need to enter the space.
You
Uh,
bet.
you'll get chewed up and spit out real quick. So, um, decision making on equipment. I did a benchmarking trip about 5 years ago in Germany, and I again have grown up in this industry, been to every IMTS since probably 1996, and
Hmm.
we spend thousands of dollars going to this greatest manufacturing technology show in the world, and we bring nuggets back, but
Hmm.
nothing really transformational. And
Hmm.
my trip to Germany with one of my colleagues here just really turned our head upside down. It was a very depressing flight from Frankfurt back to Oklahoma.
So tell us a little bit about what you learned on that trip.
Well, I mean, we were really pushing for the right solution in automation for us, and we are a low or a high mix, low volume. So a lot of people think automation is you know low mix, high volume. Well, that's not our space, and I don't
Hmm.
think that's what a lot of customers want. We still try to be lean practitioners, and we like to build to demand. So, but that trip just really opened up my eyes to the ancillary processes to subtractive manufacturing.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
and most importantly to me um, is tool control, tooling, tooling. And when I
Yeah.
mean that, I mean consumable. Know,
Yeah.
know your times. This is such a scientific business, and we've got to be in a mindset to collect data, be able to analyze it, and then make a decision on how to employ that data to your processes.
Hmm.
So we've spent a lot of time, and it was kind of ironic when we were in Germany. We were in probably the best facility that I've ever been into in a small shop. So,
Okay.
and this guy, he was second generation. His dad started with two lathes in a garage. So
Real
we
similar story.
yeah, it really was. It was a really cool time, and uh, the gentleman was just very open and open with sharing information. And there was two Americans there, asking this German, hey, what do you do about this? What do you do about this? And
Sure.
we asked him, well, what do you do when you break tooling? And he looked at us like two idiots, and he goes, we don't break tooling.
Right.
So when when we came back, I got our team together and kind of debriefed them in our conference room, and at that point in time, we had a couple UMC 750 Haas 5-axis machines right behind the wall of our conference room, and we're telling everybody kind of what we learned and what we saw, and lo and behold, boom, snapped the
Oh no.
tool. And I looked at my colleague that traveled with us, and I was just like, he's right. So at that moment in time, we really started getting real serious about our tool room, um, really searching for a dedicated tool room attendant, and getting control of that is extremely
Hmm.
necessary. So
And that was just a few years ago now, you said?
that was 5 years ago.
5 years ago. So obviously, you took over, or you joined the company officially in '94. When did you actually take over for your dad? And can you share a little bit? I'd love to. I want to come back to the tools. I want to come back to being data driven, but just going back a little bit into the history, because you obviously had a lot of years of success of growing the company, maybe without as much emphasis on that as you realize today is important. Um, but yeah, if you could just tell us a little bit of that transition from your dad to yourself, and then kind of how, and what size was the company when you joined it?
We were probably, I think, around um, 35, 40 employees at the time.
In the
Um,
early mid '90s.
yes,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
and just cranking out minimal revenue even at those numbers. I mean, it was
Mm,
just push the rock up the hill. But um, again, my dad not having any manufacturing background really put him in a
of
position to
course.
have to trust others. And
Yeah.
we got burnt a couple times by bringing in some um, general managers that were running parts on their parts on our labor and our machines on the weekends. So
I'm
you know
sorry.
we
I've heard that story a couple times.
yeah
That's
yeah
hard.
and but the transition with my father and I mean it's still ongoing. My dad is 74 right now.
Okay.
Um, it's his baby,
Hmm.
and if he ever watches this, he'll appreciate it. But you get emotionally attached,
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah. Just
and
like a child.
it's a process to be able to get through that. And we've worked hard at that. We've brought in about 10 years ago. I brought in a organizational psychologist, PhD, spent thousands of dollars working on succession planning. So this has been a long process, and
Hmm.
I've got a sister who's here. Used to have two sisters that worked here, so I mean it's a family business, and people that have been here for 35 years. So I mean they're like my older brothers. So
Hmm.
it is a difficult it's a difficult process. But when you care for one another and you have a very high level of trust and transparency, you can do a lot of things. So
Hmm.
we really work on that. My dad still comes in,
Does he?
um,
That's great.
which is at times it's hard for him to turn it off. I mean he's still wanting to take care of the customer and what's going on, but
Hmm.
the metrics have changed from he always talked about, whoever owed me went in this drawer, who I owed and went in this drawer, and what was left over went in my back pocket. It's a little bit
It's a
different
great
now.
saying.
We got a little bit, more systems in place to do that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
so, so, and I'm very analytical and, I like to plan. I like to think things out to make sure you don't have to go back and do rework. So, and sometimes he likes to move quick. I'm a little bit slower, so there's that. Um, uh, those issues that we
Hmm.
have sometimes.
Yeah.
But I, the transition is still going.
Okay.
And I think it will continue to go. I mean, I just you know, respect your respect your parents, right? So
Absolutely. So I'm reading between the lines a little bit that maybe you're a bit more process driven than your dad once was or
oh yeah,
is.
yeah.
Um, can you speak a little bit about how processes have, worked in the company? Did you start adding them bit by bit when starting in the 90s, or did it take a while before you really started to kind of
Yeah,
exert some influence on that?
yeah. In 2007, Oklahoma has a great career tech um, organization within the state, funded by the state, funded by ad valorem taxes, which is kind of unique. So there's a lot of assistance with that, and the Oklahoma Manufacturing Alliance. We have manufacturing extension agents, and we had a
Yep.
gentleman come to us and wanted to talk about lean. And
Mhm.
at that moment in time, we were really kind of looking at, do we go ISO, do we go AS? Um, we were an old MIL I 45208 quality assurance um, system way back in the day. So we knew gauge calibration, first piece buy off. I mean, we knew how to process on the floor. But
Yeah.
when processes really, when we really started to be process based, is reading the Toyota way, Toyota talent, and
Yeah.
most definitely diving into AS. So we went from MIL I to AS, and AS, at the time it was kind of a marketing decision. Do we
Sure.
need to have that moniker on there? But as you really dive into it and you use it as a tool, not just a piece of paper up on the wall, it really is a business plan. Um,
Hmm.
it really helped us kind of get out of our training pants and into our granimals, if you remember those. Um,
Uh-huh.
some of the younger kids might not remember those, but you know, being 40 plus years in existence, we've just had this slow, gradual growth.
Hmm.
Some people that won't work for, they want to see, the big up. And, I'm a firm believer the tortoise won the race, um, and slow and steady.
Hmm.
Um, Now that's relative in this business,
Of
but,
course. Of
you
course.
gotta be methodical about it, and, you know, and doing a lot of reading. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is from Edward Deming. A bad process will break a good person every time. And
That is a good one.
unfortunately, I've broken some good people by not having processes in place. And
Hmm.
as the leader of the company, you got to own that and get that fixed and get the right people in place to to get processes implemented. And I think there's so many times where people think that, okay, we've got the process set, done, walk away from it. No,
Mm.
no, you've
Just the
got
beginning. Yeah.
you got to feed it, you got to take care of it, and you got to change it. So, um, and we've been blessed also with the last three three registrar audits. Well, the past three we've had no findings. Just we had a finding here most recently, and it was
Hmm.
related to getting corrective actions closed out in a timely manner. And
That's a thing. Yep.
and if you really believe in the corrective action, the RCCA process, that's another tool. So we've
Oh,
been
yeah.
issuing more and more corrective actions internally. When something doesn't go right, issue an RCA and get it done.
Hmm.
Let's go figure out what the problem is, get it fixed, get on to the next problem. I'm
When
tired of
you
dealing
were,
with the same problems. I want new problems.
yeah, what's that quote from Einstein? The definition of insanity is
Oh
doing
yeah,
something the same way and expecting a different result.
absolutely,
Yeah, that's a
100%.
great one as well.
Yeah.
So when you were making this transition from being a little bit more, seat of the pants, shoot from the hip kind of thing into more process driven, did you have um, situations where you had employees that weren't really on board with being process driven? They like to do things sort of the cowboy way, and
Oh yeah.
and you had to part
Yeah.
ways with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got Fred in the shed mentality, and the get her done. days, you know, when you had machinists that you could hand a blueprint, a piece of raw material, and a work center, and say, "Go get me a part," you
Hmm.
know, that worked.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
and
It's hard to
and nine
find those
times out
folks
of
these days,
10, you had a conforming part,
right?
but were you profitable on it? Probably
Hmm.
not. Um, but to be able to you know, the younger generation, and you know, obviously we see more operators than machinists. Um, that we started pushing for stable, predictable processes, and we put a lot of time and energy out on the shop floor of working on that. We've got one area that is probably that's our showcase. We're still
Hmm.
working at implementing that in other areas, mainly around good setup. Um,
Hmm.
you know, there's just so many, you know, setup reduction techniques that you can do and documentation to be able to set those operators up for success out on the shop floor. You know, we spend all this time out on the shop floor. Well, what are we doing on the front end? Because, you know, the old way was, well, we need more people out on the shop floor. No, or we need an
Those are hard to
estimator.
find.
And now you're
Yeah,
just compounding your problems. Hey, let's get it to the shop floor the way that it's supposed to be and get all the information, everything to the operator so they're successful. So that has really helped us a lot.
so is that, I was going to say, if we could dig into a couple of tactics, you know, for setup production, what would be sort of the highlights for you of what's most important to make sure a setup goes smoothly on the floor?
Um, I think first and foremost, having good, um, well, a good methodology of setup in regards to subplates. Um,
Hmm.
and quick changeover jaws on your lays and multitasking machines. Um, you know, but anytime you start talking about that, you start seeing a lot of dollar signs around work holding too. But the ROI's there. It is. I
Yeah,
mean, you know, we just started trying to drill in. Let's start talking setups in minutes, like
sure.
like Taiichi Ono said, SMED, single minute
Mhm.
exchange of die, and not in hours. You know,
Mhm.
but we still have some setups that we haven't, you know, really developed. You know, the subplates and you know, but they're on the list. We're working towards
Mhm.
them, and we're getting there. Um, the documentation, um, you know, the kitting of the tools, you know, having everything, you know, job running and next up on deck,
Yep.
and making sure that all the resources required are ready to roll. The minute that last good part is off that machine, you jump in and get that changeover completed, get that first piece buy off, and get to producing. But
Yeah. Yeah.
documentation. I mean, it's resources. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that
I love that. When I talk to shops or go visit shops, a lot of times when I see a setup machinist walk up to a machine, the first thing they do is they look around and then they leave again, right? They they go get something that they didn't have, tools, gauges, soft jaws, material, you know, go talk to the programmer because they're not sure what to do. Yeah, it's remarkable, and that is all setup time, right? Like just like you said, from the last good part up your prior job till the first part off that you've bought off and you're ready to run. That's all setup time.
yeah.
So
You know, and in a lot of these bigger companies, you know, a lot of these supply chain people are very intelligent and know manufacturing very well, and you know they're looking for shops that are looking at reducing setup because they sure don't want that amortized into their per piece price.
no,
So
they don't want to pay for that.
no, no,
Yeah,
and
I have a good friend that's a supply chain manager in an aerospace company, and he says within 5 minutes of coming into a shop, I can just smell if there's chaos. You know, I can just tell, and I can easily suss out if this is a shop I want to work with or not.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. my story is if you walk through a shop and you don't, and you understand what their, control of non-conforming product procedure is, and if they're using red tags, you know, if I don't see a red tag in a shop, I get scared because, I've been in this business. We're splitting human hairs into quarters, and you're gonna have some fallout,
Sure.
and hopefully minimal, but you should be able to see a red tag or a few at least.
So you mentioned that you're now doing more corrective actions. Do you think the same way about nonconformance reports?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've always told myself, if somebody ever recruited me to work for them, where would I start? And I'd say, well, hand me your management review minutes first. I want to go through your last year management review minutes because we're pretty fanatical about our management review, and our QMS team does a great job. But you can really see where the company's going and where they've been through the inputs and outputs of management review. And
Hmm.
that kind of, obviously is going to get your internal audits and your corrective actions all kind of accumulated into one report. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, corrective actions are, it's a tool, and it's just like a customer audit. We had a customer a few years ago call us on a Friday and say, "Hey, we're going to be on Monday to do an audit. Is that okay?" And I was like, "Sure." And the top, the second to the top guy walked in with the audit team, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "Well, we've had a little FAA thing going on, and
Okay.
the board wanted to make sure that upper management was at all these." So, I mean, if your house is in order, I mean, come on, and
Yeah.
it's
Anytime. Anytime.
open book. And those customer audits too are, you know, we can be so tunnel visioned that we're missing some easy stuff, and another set of eyes and ears and nose and touch, is good to have in your facility to help us, because none of us are 100% and we all have dysfunction. It's
Hmm.
identifying it and trying to get it fixed.
Yeah. Great wisdom. I love it. So tell us your approach to buying machines. You mentioned you obviously started with some Moris, you have a few Haas's. And you're at your FMS system. So tell us a little bit about how you've thought about buying machines over the years.
Well, again, we can go from, like, the beginning stage of, hey, customers mad that we're late, go get another spindle. Let's go buy it.
Right.
We bought a machine in one day after a Kaizen event started on Monday. We bought the machine Monday afternoon and had it running parts by, I think, Thursday or Friday that week. That's been one approach. Um,
Hmm.
Other approaches have been, um, what's the right tool for the job. Um, you know, Buying machines to me is a lot like buying vehicles. They all about do the same thing, and there's different levels. You know, um, but it's really when they break down, how quick can you get them fixed, and
Yep.
and and having that support and service was really important to us, especially putting this FMS. So we were pretty much a Mazak house,
Okay.
for quite a few years. We really loved the mill turns.
Hmm.
Um, I think at one point in time we had, not that this says much, but we had more mill turn pieces of equipment in our facility than the state of Arkansas at one point in time. That was
Hmm.
told to me, but we love the done in one.
Right.
Does it take a little bit more time to set up? Absolutely, but you reduce. Those multitasking machines, the multi-axis machines, they almost become these faux one-piece cells,
Sure. Oh
one-piece
yeah.
faux cells. So
Yeah. When you
that's why
talk.
we kind of cut our teeth on programming five-axis on the Hosses, and now we're, Kuma MU5000s on our FMS and some
Oh, nice.
M460s, and we're installing a Multus U3000 with a load and go robot on it right now. So real excited to get that up and going. And um, you know, capabilities. What are your capabilities? And being in kind of the job shop kind of production shop, it's what do you have the equipment to be able to do this? And
Hmm.
a lot of these design engineers just have all this firepower with these design CAD systems.
Sure.
I mean, it's some crazy geometries and features that are happening, and I love it. I mean, I love seeing it come out a piece of raw material and
Mhm.
put our name on it. That means a lot to me.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously you've thrown out a lot of stuff about lean, and that we often think about, multitasking machines or multi-pallet machines, these mini one-piece flows, because it removes so many of the wastes, right? Those wastes of the trailer production system,
Oh, definitely.
transportation and overproduction and scrap and movement and motion, and just there's so many of them that get eliminated when you make a part all in one.
Yeah. The old batch and queue, and I remember as a kid, sawing parts on the horizontal bandsaw, loading them up into a pallet box, going, okay, where's the forklift? Go find the forklift, and drive it up, and then we'd put it on a VMC and pop some holes in it. Then we'd take it over to the lathe, and then we'd take it over to the punch, and you know, we actually had it was really the first time I'd ever seen a true one-piece flow cell in action,
Mhm.
and we had um, a couple product lines running through, and it was kind of interesting. We were able to run one in one direction and a total different set of parts the opposite direction, and
Hmm.
it was really cool, and we had bought a y-axis lathe to do these parts complete.
Mhm.
And when we really started crunching the numbers on the cycle times and balancing the load, we threw a VMC and were able to reduce the cycle time down by about 30%. So
Right.
not all the time is the multitasking the
Oh,
right
sure.
answer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, but the same concept applies if you're able to process a part from raw material to finish in one complete flow. In our shop, we coined this term that we kind of were pleased with. It was called bar to box. And we would have a very tiny little right-sized bandsaw right next to the machine, and we would cut a single piece of material, put it in the machine it as far as we could, straight out into another machine, or maybe complete in one. But we had these parts that were large enough we couldn't do them all in one, so we'd have one person running both machines right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they do in-process QC, they do deburring, bead blasting, cleaning, rinsing, and sometimes masking of threads, and then straight into a bubble bag, into a box, all in one complete cycle of the machine, and that was
It's
bar to
awesome.
box.
It's awesome.
And the other thing that it really engages an employee, right? They're not just punching a button and putting raw material in and out of one machine. They're responsible for the entire process. This part they just put in the bag, they was their baby from start to finish. And yeah, they really engaged them more, and it was more fun because we were also, high mix, low volume, and people liked that frequency of brand new parts, new challenges, and
Absolutely.
but
Our 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 FMS right now is just doing subtractive, and
I
what
wanted to
our
ask you about subtractive versus additive, and you have any plans in your shop for that?
yeah, I mean, we've, having, a division in plastics, we've always, you know, stayed attuned to the industry, and I think it's a great technology that can be used in a lot of different ways. Um, that subtractive isn't going to go away ever, I don't think.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Um, but I think, you know, I here's a great idea somebody shared with me not too long ago. They were using a 3D printer for fixtures for their video jet machine to get the spray in the right location on the part. I thought,
Hmm.
well, that's a great idea. I mean, because I don't, I don't know if in your past experience in your shop, most of your NCs are coming from parts not being marked properly. Either when you do a Pareto chart and on where's most of your NCs coming from? Well, it's
Sure.
we, we got it all the way through production. Now we can't even put the dang part number in the right place.
Sure.
Um, so I heard somebody use that. You know, I think there's some in maybe in some fixturing. I mean, we're so window frame and dovetail heavy right now.
Hmm.
That's pretty simple. Prep up
Yeah.
and you're up and running. So, um, you know, I there's a company here in town that is doing a phenomenal job with additive, and they're doing a lot of dyes for sheet metal.
Mm.
So they'll do that 3D, and they're really helping a lot of people out get some sheet metal parts out a lot quicker than your traditional, tool and die type process. But our long-term goal for our FMS, kind of like what you were talking about, your one-piece flow cell is, we bought this system to really learn how to operate it properly. What are the inputs, and eventually we've got a green space that we own right next to our facility, which is a blessing, and um, we we want to build a FMS that has robotic deburr, part washing, and metrology all in the
Hmm.
same system.
Right.
And
That's
that's
exciting.
put that bar in there and
Yeah.
go to a box.
Yeah.
So
Very exciting. Cool. So we're getting close to the end of our time. Um, where can folks learn about you? What is the website of your company? And if they want to say hello to you, where would they do that?
the web address is www.advcosinc.com, short for Advanced Companies Incorporated.
Okay.
We're in just north of Tulsa,
Hmm.
Oklahoma, little community just about 10 minutes north called Owasso. Um, been here all my life, and our web address, again, but phone number 918-664-5410.
I'll make
We'll
sure those are in the show notes as well.
I love sharing our mistakes. I mean, this business is tough, and you hate seeing people close their doors, and
Hmm.
with COVID and a lot of the commercial aerospace in this area. This is not as robust as up in your northwest area, but there's a lot of aerospace people in this
Hmm.
area, and you know you you hate getting opportunities from customers that are telling you, well, this shop's no longer around, and
Yeah.
that's not a good thing for us, but as a country, but you know, here to help and here to share anytime.
Yeah. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time. I love your insights about customer, doing your best to always be customer focused. That's huge. Being process driven. Being sounds like you work hard to have a really great culture in your company and support your employees really well. That's obviously a key if you have folks that have been there 35 years.
Control your tooling, tooling,
And
tooling,
control your
tooling.
tooling. Yes.